In the middle of the night, when everyone was asleep, Sarah was sitting alone in her dimly lit room, scrolling through the internet. She stumbled upon a mysterious website that claimed to be a portal to an alternate dimension called the Backrooms. The website promised that anyone who entered the Backrooms would never be the same again. It intrigued Sarah, and she couldn't resist the temptation of exploring this unknown realm. She clicked on the link, and before she knew it, she was transported into a bizarre world that was nothing like she had ever seen before. As soon as she entered the Backrooms, she was hit with a wave of musty air that smelled like old carpet and mildew. The walls were yellow and stained, and the fluorescent lights flickered erratically. There was no way out, and she was trapped in a maze of endless rooms and hallways that seemed to stretch on forever. The further Sarah ventured into the Backrooms, the more she realized that she was not alone. She could hear the sound of footsteps echoing in the distance, and something was following her. She couldn't see what it was, but she could feel its presence, and it was getting closer. As she turned a corner, she saw a man standing at the end of the hallway. His face was shrouded in darkness, and all she could see was the glint of his eyes. He beckoned her closer, and Sarah felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She wanted to turn around and run away, but she couldn't. The man's gaze was hypnotic, and she felt compelled to approach him. When she was only a few steps away, the man disappeared into the shadows, leaving Sarah alone in the hallway. Suddenly the lights went out, and Sarah was plunged into complete darkness. She could feel something breathing on the back of her neck, and she knew that it was not human. Sarah screamed as she felt something wrap around her ankle and pull her down. She hit the ground hard and felt a searing pain in her leg. She looked down to see a pair of glowing eyes staring back at her. Whatever it was, it had her now, and there was no escape. Sarah screamed for what felt like an eternity, but no one came to her rescue. She was trapped in the Backrooms forever, never to see the light of day again. Her screams echoed through the endless maze of rooms and hallways, a constant reminder of the horrors that lurked within the Backrooms. Lena had always been fascinated by urban legends, and the Backrooms was one of the most intriguing ones she had ever heard of. She had spent weeks researching it, reading stories and theories, and finally decided to explore it herself. Lena gathered a few of her friends and told them about her plan. They were hesitant at first, but Lena's excitement was contagious, and they eventually agreed to join her on the adventure. They arrived at the location of the Backrooms, a nondescript building in the heart of the city. Lena took the lead, and they followed her as she pushed open the door and stepped inside. As soon as they entered, the door slammed shut behind them, and they heard the sound of locks clicking into place. Lena turned around to try and open the door, but it wouldn't budge. They were trapped. The room they were in was nothing like what Lena had imagined. The walls were a sickly green color, and the floor was sticky with an unknown substance. The room was completely bare, except for a lone chair in the center. Suddenly the lights flickered on, revealing a figure sitting in the chair. It was a man, but his skin was a sickly gray color, and his eyes were completely black. Lena and her friends tried to run, but the door was still locked and they were trapped. The man in the chair spoke in a deep, gravelly voice. "Welcome to the Backrooms. You are now a part of my collection." Lena and her friends screamed as they realized that they were not alone. Dozens of other people were trapped in the room with them, their eyes lifeless and their bodies emaciated. The man in the chair continued to speak, telling them about his twisted hobby of collecting people who had entered the Backrooms. He had been doing it for years, and no one had ever escaped. As Lena and her friends looked around the room, they noticed that something was off about the other people trapped there. Their bodies were contorted in unnatural ways, and their eyes seemed to be following them. Suddenly the lights went out, and the room was plunged into darkness. Lena and her friends huddled together, trying to keep calm as they heard the sounds of scratching and shuffling coming from the corners of the room. The scratching grew louder, and Lena realized that there were creatures crawling towards them in the darkness. The creatures had no faces, and their limbs were twisted and broken, like they had been contorted in some grotesque experiment. The creatures closed in on Lena and her friends, and they could feel their breath on their skin. Lena screamed as she felt one of the creatures grab her ankle, pulling her down to the ground. Her friends tried to pull her up, but the creature's grip was too strong. Lena was dragged away, screaming as she disappeared into the darkness. The other people trapped in the room were now starting to move, their limbs snapping and contorting as they crawled towards Lena's friends. The man in the chair laughed as he watched the scene unfold, pleased with his new additions to his collection. Lena's friends were eventually consumed by the creatures, their screams echoing through the endless maze of the backrooms. They had entered the backrooms seeking adventure, but they had found only horror and despair. No one knows what happens to those who enter the backrooms, but the legend lives on, a warning to those who dare to explore the unknown. Mary had always been a skeptic when it came to urban legends, so when her friend Tim told her about the backrooms, she laughed it off. Tim was convinced that the rumors were true, that there was a strange parallel world that existed beyond the walls of our reality, and that people had been lost inside it for years. One night, Mary decided to humor Tim and explore the abandoned building where the backrooms were said to be located. As they entered the building, they noticed that something was off. The air felt heavy, and there was an eerie silence that seemed to envelop them. The deeper they went into the building, the more distorted their surroundings became. The walls seemed to shift and warp, and the colors around them became muted and strange. Suddenly, they came upon a room that looked like it had been ripped out of time itself. The walls were a sickly yellow, and there were no windows or doors. The room was completely empty, except for a single chair in the center. As Mary and Tim examined the chair, they noticed that there was something underneath it. They lifted the chair, and to their horror, they saw a man's face staring back at them. The man's skin was a sickly gray color, and his eyes were wide open, staring up at them in terror. Mary and Tim tried to run, but they soon realized that they were trapped in the room. The walls had started to close in on them, crushing them with an invisible force. As they struggled to escape, they heard a voice whispering to them from the shadows. The voice was deep and distorted, and it seemed to be coming from all around them. "Welcome to the backrooms," the voice said. "You are now part of my collection." Mary and Tim realized that they were not alone in the room. The man under the chair had been just one of many people who had been trapped in the backrooms. As the walls continued to close in, Mary and Tim could feel their bodies contorting and twisting in unnatural ways. They screamed in pain as they were forced into grotesque shapes, their bones snapping and cracking under the pressure. Eventually, they were consumed by the darkness, becoming just another part of the backrooms. The legend of the backrooms lives on, a warning to those who dare to explore the unknown, and a testament to the horrors that can lie beyond the walls of our reality. Thanks for watching today's video. Please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. It really helps us out. And until next time, stay safe and never wander too far from the light.